What is going on, miners, and welcome back to the Hobbyist Miner channel. Well, today we are at it again with a Meet the Miner episode, but this time we've gone big. Today I'd like to introduce Daniel Keller, co-founder of Flux and Zelcore. Welcome, Daniel.
Well, thank you for having me on. I don't know about big, man, but maybe the baddest, maybe the big and the baddest. I don't know.
I love it. I love it. Okay, how about the most badass? There we go. Now we're set.
I like
we're good.
A plus.
Awesome. For those of you guys that are discovering the channel for the very first time, I'm the Hobbyist Miner. I am a hobbyist miner that has grown in the scene in the last year and a half. And every once in a while, about once a month, we do a episode just like this called Meet the Miner. And we bring on different individuals within the crypto mining space, personalities, content creators. And today you're in for a treat because we're going to talk a ton about Flux and a ton about Zelcore. Are you ready to get started?
Hell yes. Let's do it.
Awesome. So let's learn a little bit more about you. You know, we have lots to talk about with Flux, but let's talk about you. So what's your background in the tech space? I mean, you're a co-founder of something as big as Flux. Where did you come from to get to the point that you're at today?
I ask myself that all the time. Where did I come from? Because I spent the majority of my career in C-suite level IT services. So, CIO by trade. And, I spent basically the majority of my career centralizing everything, right? Because back in the day, it was on-prem. You wanted to control your servers, your data systems, everything. Everything needs to be in control. And then along comes the cloud, right? So then I spent the next part of my career moving everything from a colo location,
bare metal, your bare metal setup,
into the cloud, and then I just went, I jumped the shark and just went off, and now the rest of my twilight of my career is going to be all around decentralization and putting the power of technology back in the hands of the people. That's really my goal.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really interesting, though, as you talk about it. Like, that is kind of the evolution of the space that we exist in. You know, you go from bare metal into cloud, or quote cloud, and then web one, as we affectionately call it. And now we're moving into decentralization, all within a 20-year span, which is insanity. I mean, technology has advanced so quickly over such a short-term time period, which is nuts. So you've been in the tech space for quite a long time now, it sounds like it. So that being said, how did you exactly get involved with developing something like a cryptocurrency or a platform or a decentralized network? Because it's not like you wake up one day and just wander into such an endeavor.
Well, I tell you, the story's kind of funny. I've been in this space longer than I care to admit, and I just like everybody else, I had my lessons that I learned along the way as well. And very early on, a friend of mine, actually, if you really want to get down to brass tacks, I learned about Bitcoin from World of Warcraft because
that's awesome.
A bunch of my friends and I were playing World of Warcraft, and you could go in and you could buy gold with, Bitcoin. And I was like, what is this Bitcoin thing? So I went out and I started researching a little bit and fell down the rabbit hole, and the rest is history. So awesome. I've been a crypto miner by heart. So at one particular point in time, I had one of the biggest mining facilities on the East Coast. Worked off nuclear power. 1070 Ti's for the win. We had a
heck yeah.
We had a crap ton of them. So they mined a lot of Flux very early on. I loved building rigs for fun. And that's how it all happens, right? It starts out with one rig, put together.
It's an addiction. It's an addiction, Dan. It's an addiction.
And the next thing you know, you're crawling through Facebook Marketplace looking for anything that looks like a graphics card you can cram into a rig. You know what I mean?
Yep. That's okay. Well, so first off, let's take a step back because there's a lot to unpack there. Hoarder Alliance.
Oh. Alliance. I know you're.
There we go.
Oh, you're Alliance?
I played
best friends.
I know, right? I went to the dark side a few times, but always came back to the light. So is that why Flux has the Alliance blue then? Let's be honest here. Favorite color?
Maybe.
Connecting the dots. All right. I like it.
Yeah.
So you talked about having your own mining farm. When was that? How long ago was that you had such a facility?
That would have been in the 2016, 2017 area,
Wow.
right when we were in full bull market, right? So everything you did, you made money. You woke up in the morning, you made money. You got a shower, you made money. You went to work, you made money. And then all of a sudden, here comes 2018, right? And it just, this corrective, nasty, everything just goes down. We're in a bear market for several years after that. So what did I do to, expand my horizons? Is in the middle of a bear market, we built a cryptocurrency. Why the hell not?
You doubled down. You doubled down. I like it.
Well, and very early on when we sat down and we started looking at what the project was going to be, it was a bunch of like-minded folks that came together, and we all talked about decentralization and the fact that we believed the future of the internet was going to be a decentralized one. Back then, we called it was decentralized compute. Today, it's called Web3, and that's really how I kind of got into it. The mining, building Flux and Zelcore together. It's been a really awesome ride. Like I can't even explain it. How exciting it has been these past 4.5 years. It's really been awesome.
Yeah, it's insane because it's like the time before, like I look at it, I've only been in the space for about 1.5 years, but like hearing stories from individuals like you, or when I talk to Carter Bitsby Tripping and other individuals who have been in the space for years, and to hear that, like, wow, there were people mining several years ago and they were going full board then versus like where we are now, which is insane. Like being a part of everything last January, or the previous before actually, was crazy. I came into the scene like that January period when it was just everything at that point to me as a new miner was making money, which was crazy. So I can only imagine your journey. I mean, we could sit here and talk forever just about nuclear power and your own mining facility, which is great. So maybe in our next video together.
Absolutely.
But that being said, let's take a step back real quick. So GPU mining. Are you mining at home? Are you a GPU miner? How extensive is your farm other than saying Flux?
Well, I'll be honest with you. That mining facility, I eventually tore it. We tore it all down and basically, started to run nodes because the nodes were, we can run a lot more nodes. We have a lot more ability in terms of, do I still mine? Yeah. And you can ask my wife. She yells at me because it's too hot over here in the basement. She's like, "What are you doing back there?" I'm like, "Yep, leave it be."
Don't come down. Don't come down. Don't come down. I hear you.
We don't have to worry about heat in the wintertime. We'll leave it at that. But yeah, I mean, I'd say I'm still a miner by heart, and really the project, we hold our miners near and dear to our heart because really that's how I cut my teeth. I came up through the ranks being a miner, learning about, fundamentals of projects, spec mining, all that kind of stuff. That was a lot of fun to me. And it meant a lot to me too, going up through that. So I want to make sure that Flux emulates that forward for new people coming into the space. Like you've been here for 1.5 years or so, I want to make sure that we have, as Ethereum heads off to proof of stake, I want to make sure that we have a quality project to, it's kind of funny because I said 4 years ago, we need to build Flux to take the place of Ethereum when they move to proof of stake.
Wow.
And that's been 4 years since. So thank you, Vitalik, and that whole group for giving us the time to get ready for it, because I really do appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, I want to give that same experience to miners and people that are out there excited to be in the space now as it is. So.
Yeah, I've heard you many times on a lot of the live streams that you're a part of, which definitely sets you apart from some other co-founders out there and dev teams out there involved in the crypto scene. Many times you have talked about the fact of, you're very much focused on miners and on node owners. Like that is your bread and butter. And that's really nice to hear, because I think we as GPU miners, we look at how the GPU mining market is being handled by something like Ethereum. And, you're not really going to hear a lot of the talk of GPU miners on any dev calls when you're talking about Ethereum. I mean, that is not their goal. That is not what they're focused on. So it's great to hear from Flux and your side of the tracks that like GPU miners is really where that focus is at, and especially nodes, which I can't wait to ask you some more questions about that. But before we jump the gun, give us the rundown there of just kind of the history of Flux, because I think there's a lot of history behind that. How did that get started? When did that get started? Kind of give us the rundown.
Well, it found its way into into existence like every other shitcoin. It was a carbon copy of. Yeah, I'd say shit. I'm kidding.
Good for you. Good for you.
But I'm kidding. But the concept is somewhat similar,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So you have to emerge a shitcoin, and then like a beautiful swan, you start to fly, right? So then you're no longer a shitcoin, right? Then you're a gold. Then you're a unicorn. You're a golden goose.
I like
right?
it.
So we knew we wanted to do something with it. We just didn't know quite what. So we had to sit down as a team and figure out exactly what we wanted to do. We knew that there were two problems we were aiming to fix. We wanted to make the actual self-custody of multiple assets, especially ones that were mineable, seamless, because there wasn't, at that particular point in time, there was nothing seamless. Actually, the wallets back then were terrifying at best.
Oh, I can only imagine.
No creature comforts, and I listen to these guys complain today, and they're like, "Well, I don't like the UI on this particular piece." I'm like, I was lucky I had a wallet that would actually, open up and do the things that I needed it to do, and not, I could sleep at night knowing that my assets are safe. So we want to make sure we took care of that. We want to make sure our assets. The multi-asset piece was we wanted to support other chains as well. So Raven was one of our first ads. Ethereum was one of our first ads. All these different, obviously Bitcoin and the other ones.
Yeah.
And then we started to identify spec projects that we wanted to add in as well and give them the opportunity to have a really good, well-developed self-custody platform for their assets. And that's how we kind of pulled them in. That was one problem. The second problem was a very unique one, and that was the fact that around the time that Flux was created, there was already starting to see the signs of deplatforming. The numbers of individuals who were building their infrastructure on AWS, the attack, there was, at that particular point, there was some pretty significant attacks, and a large portion of the internet went down. And, I was sitting there talking to the guys, I was like, there's got to be a better way. There has to be a better way than this. And that's when we took the old idea of master nodes back in the day. If you've been in this space long enough, you remember the master node craze, right? Everybody was like, it's kind of like yield farming and DeFi nowadays. It's like, 10,000, % return on investment. Just get in here, da da da. Okay, and all the node projects.
Got your salesman hat on there. Yeah.
Yep. And all those node projects took a crap, but with every technology that emerges, we find a gem there. And what we found was deterministic nodes. And we said, we're going to build on top of Flux these deterministic nodes. And what that means is there's 3 different node classes, and each one of them have requirements to deploy. So they have, basically your capital that you have to deploy to run the node, plus the computational resources. And we said, if we build that on top of then Zel and then soon to be Flux, that we'll be able to deliver AWS style service to individuals in a decentralized manner. And it was decentralized compute, but it's come to be known as Web3. Awesome buzzword. We picked up on it immediately, and we fit kind of right into it.
Good job, marketing team. So it sounds like, and he's reading down my notes, I swear, guys, that ZelCore came first, is what it sounds like. Is that correct?
One
ZelCore before the other?
Yep, ZelCore. Well, we knew we needed to have a gateway, right? And that's what, you call ZelCore like the gateway of Web3. And then, of course, Web3, the way we envision it, the delivery model, the framework, is what Flux is now today. So you needed a way to tie that ecosystem back to the ability to maintain and control your own custody of your assets, your nodes, your node deployments, your pretty much everything that ZelCore does today. So instead of building one and putting all our eggs in one basket, what we did is we built both projects at the same time. We built ZelCore and we built what became Flux.
That's really smart.
So we divided and conquered. There's a lot of cross-pollination between both projects. ZelCore is a private company. It's kind of, think of it, when I tell people this, ZelCore is kind of like the Lightning Labs to Bitcoin, and Flux is Bitcoin, right? So that's an easy way to understand it. So, our goal was to be very decentralized. We wanted to make sure that all of our miners were taken care of, our node operators were taken care of, and the economic model made sense. And we didn't want some inflationary BS asset. We wanted a deflationary model, and that's how we ended up with probably what I would say one of the best economic models in crypto.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I'll be honest, when I started a year and a half ago, I had never heard of Flux before. And as a newbie joining the scene and even getting started, I was really dealing with some of your bare bone basics, your Ethereum, your Ravencoin, Ethereum Classic, was then. But I feel like Flux has really taken off over the last year and a half. So kudos to you and your team. I mean, it's probably been a wild ride. But moving along, we're actually talking about a few of those coins there. What really sets Flux apart from the proof of work coins from other ones out there like that are well known to the GPU mining scene, like your Ethereum Classic, Ravencoin, and Ergo? What would you say really sets your Flux apart?
Well, I'll start off by saying I like all those projects. I mean, anything that's proof of work, people often ask me, they say, who's your competition? I'm saying, like, we don't have competition, we have opportunities. So,
Okay.
We worked with Raven immediately to get their assets added to Zelcore. We've worked with the Raven community, quite a bit. Other projects in the space, matter of fact, I think we're going to probably reach out to Ergo about a possibility to, do some things there.
That'd be awesome.
Any proof of work project is okay in my book, and then that's what I'd like. I would say the biggest thing that separates us from any other cryptocurrency is I think you have to do your own research and your due diligence, but you start to look at use cases because you hear a lot of people talk about what's the utility of your asset. Yeah. Flux has been tested, tried and true. We've had legal reviews in the United States and Europe and with the Swiss. And every single time it comes back, these are utility assets. And the reason we did it that way is we ingrained Flux in everything on the ecosystem. If you want to run a node, you need Flux. If you want to deploy a dApp, you need Flux. If you want to deploy a website, you need Flux. If you want to deploy an Oracle, you need Flux. If you want to use Zelcore, you'll need some Flux. If you want to use decentralized two-factor authentication, you're going to need Flux. If you want to use your Zel ID, there has to be a piece tied to that with Flux. The Linux distribution model that we built with Flux OS will then also integrate Flux into every aspect of projects that build on top of Flux. So the gas model, we didn't create a secondary gas model. We said, we weren't like projects were like, if you're burning an asset or you're, whatever, you're manipulating the economic model and it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
It's the same way you wouldn't burn Bitcoin, right? So you wouldn't go out and say, we're going to burn Bitcoin for the value to increase.
Blasphemy.
Yeah. it basically recycles, right? So, you can buy 0.0000001 Flux, right? I think that was enough zeros, but I'm not sure. But
it works.
And, our goal was to make sure that Flux was tied in every way. And I would say the response that you had about Flux, didn't hear about Flux. That's what we hear from pretty much everyone. It's like we didn't see Flux coming. Well, there was a reason for that. We didn't do one lick of marketing or PR on the project. I mean, very, very organic, well developed. Built the community up very slowly and incrementally, and then just like that, once we had more than a minimal viable project, we had a fully developed ecosystem. So going back to your question is I think when you look at these and miners are super logical, right? There's a lot of projects out there that would attack miners. All they do is mine and they dump and they move it to BTC or they'll take fiat or whatever. I don't believe that. And as a matter of fact, that's not what we see with Flux. We see people that are miners also running nodes because what they're doing is they're mining their way in. They're selling enough to pay for their utilities, making sure the electric's paid, making sure that buy the wife a nice meal out to make sure that she's not mad at you for mining in the basement.
Yeah, 100%.
And then over here, they're running nodes because they want to move. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've seen say, I'm mining and I'll be, at my next node here in another, 2,000 Flux or something like that. I mean, so for us, it was honestly just about inclusion. We believe in mining. A lot of people ask, they say, would you ever go proof of stake? And absolutely not. Like it's, proof of stake.
That's so nice to hear. So nice to hear.
Completely centralized. and if you're out there, if you're out there mining right now and you're on you're on ETH and you're thinking about where do I iterate to next after ETH, go to a project that cares about you, that will rely on you, that will depend on you, that will be honest with you, And that is Flux in a nutshell. And I'm not trying to sell anything. Go to any one of those projects.
I smile because one of my last questions here, folks, on my interview was like, hey, you have the GPU Miner platform. Why should we come to Flux after Ethereum? And this guy's jumped ahead and is already like answering all my questions, which I love, which is awesome.
I'll go deeper when we get to that one. Promise.
Awesome.
Okay?
Awesome. No, that's perfect. No, it's really good to know. I mean, I think you talked a lot about utility there. And I hear that a lot, within the space. I'm a GPU miner, so at the end of the day, a lot of these things aren't as important to me, just as you had said. But a lot of the things that you talked about there, as you started to roll through them, like, even though I've been invested in Flux for some time now, is seeing how Flux is, just like you said, ingrained in everything. I mean, it's funny, I was talking with a few miners the other night. They were talking about their nodes, as they're always talking about Flux nodes now. And they're not even going the factor of mining now. They're just like, all right, how much do I have to buy in order to get my next node? Like, I want to buy Flux. So either way, it is a token. Instead of going, I'm going to take USD and buy a node, it is, I'm going to buy Flux. And then a Flux is going to get me that node. So it's awesome how you guys have done that. I mean, it's so far forward thinking. It's insane to me, like looking at it from a top-down perspective. So let's flip gears here a little bit. We're talking about proof of work. We're talking about miners. What role do miners in your ecosystem play when it comes down to Flux and the proof of work platform? From a high level, what role do we play?
Oh my God, you guys are intricate. I mean, the node operators and the miners, they're they're what makes the world go round. I mean, essentially in the Flux ecosystem, it's our consensus model, our layer one, our consensus model, our transactional validator. I mean, I often tell people, you hear people in the crypto space, they say we have a cryptocurrency. We happen to be a tech company that happens to have a cryptocurrency. So it's not like we're crypto. We've built technology on top of this stack. And I will say this to you, I don't think there's another project as deeply developed in an ecosystem as what Flux is. And I'm not saying that because it's my project. I'm saying because I can back it up. And that's important. And interchain operability is important. Working with other projects is important. Understanding where your miners come into play. So for us to be successful, we have to have the evangelists of the project, right? The people that educate themselves. And I would say most miners, because I know I was this way, and I'm sure you're this way too. When you start to look at a new project and you do your due diligence and you evaluate it, when you all of a sudden see that little epiphany, that light that comes on, and you're like, oh, holy shit, that's going to be amazing. That's going to be a big deal, right? That's what you get with Flux. You get it I call it the rabbit hole. Once you go down the rabbit hole, you're done.
Yep.
I had a guy the other day that was Fortune 500 company. Was talking to this guy, and he's explaining a little bit about Flux. And I said, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to send you some info, a bunch of it. I want you to look it over. I want you to digest it and get back to me when you can. So, 3 days later, I get a message back, and it's been, I haven't stopped reading about Flux. Flux is amazing, and I just bought a whole bunch of it, and I think I might try to run a node. I'm just like,
that's my God. Stepping stones
so quickly, right? So.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, that is awesome. So, talking on the GPU miner side of things, just the other week we had the quote great hash rate migration that was put together with a handful of different content creators in the scene, organized with a bunch of people. And I know you guys were huge advocates of it, posting it on social media and a driving factor. What increase did you guys see on your network from that? Small, big, and kind of what did you guys learn from that?
Well, the one thing we learned is that miners will give you so much of their attention span, but they're going back to whatever's profitable. That's what we learned. No,
welcome to our world. Welcome to our world.
Yeah, no, and I respect it because I did the same thing myself, right? So, but what we did was we saw about 11% hash spike almost immediately as it happened. I think a lot of people probably turned it on, tuned it in. Yep. And big shout out to Sonatech and DJ Mines and those guys for putting that together and really kind of pushing it. I believe we're probably going to have a bigger event closer to time. And I think it's going to be an incentivized event too. I think there could be some really unique opportunities for people to really dig in and test their gear, stress test what they're doing, and be ready for that switch. And I'm not saying you got to mine Flux, but I'm saying you got to be ready. So that's that gives us the
I mean,
opportunity.
it's a great talking point that we have amongst the GPU miner scene right now. Just talking about, like, I always tell people, day one, hour one, minute one, where are you going? And it's like nobody's prepared, because it's like, from a GPU miner's perspective, just like you said, we're following profitability. Well, guess what? If profitability all of a sudden is flipping every few minutes and it's a wild west, it's going to be pure insanity. And I tell people, I'm like, as concerning as Ethereum's proof of stake is for a lot of GPU miners that have really invested heavily, and this is their way of life and everything, and their primary stream of income, I know it can be pretty scary. For me, as a hobby, this is great. I'm thrilled. I'm excited to see what happens from here.
Well, so I just want to follow up on that one bit, because one thing that I did figure out, I had an epiphany moment when we were going through this Hashrate migration, and I was watching everybody get ready for it. I was watching the different discords. What settings are you using? What are you doing here? What are you doing here? And all of a sudden, it dawned on me. We know that the proof of stake move by Ethereum is imminent.
Yep.
Miners are, on top of being, technologically astute, they also know the economics of the system. And when I say the system, buy a graphics card at X price, mine for ROI at X price. Once it's met ROI, how do I spec mine? How do I take positions? And one thing that you're not seeing, and this is telling, is the prices of graphics cards drastically dropping as people would get out of mining prior to ETH. And actually what you're seeing is people, at least I'm all over the place, right? So I'm always looking at what the cycles are. They're actually taking higher positions in their cards. They're buying more cards, they're buying more rigs, they're understanding that coming into the next iteration, So what that says to me is the miners aren't going anywhere. They're here, and they're going to move to the next logical project, plural, because I think we're down to a few that they definitely can mine appropriately. And I think that drives the price. It drives the adoption of the project. It drives more miners to it, as they don't, I remember mining ETH at $2.50. I remember mining Zcash at $5 or something like that. It was so super weird. And I think that's what the opportunity that a lot of folks are seeing now is, and I don't see a lot of people exiting the space, which is good.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's, if you ask a miner, they don't just they don't say I'm an Ethereum miner. They say I'm a crypto miner. I'm a GPU miner. Yep. And that's exactly what you're doing. And it's like, in my case, like I've increased my purchasing, of GPUs, of miners, of everything, because I am very much, as a hobbyist here, I'm doubling down. Like, during the time period, like and also it's part of that addiction part of it, where it's like, okay, I see a graphics card, like a 3070 for $599. I'm like, yes. I'm like, yes. Like, it's just like, have to. So, no, I totally understand. So let's see here. So from a GPU miner's perspective, what GPUs does your team find? Because we were just talking about like overclocking and stuff like that, and efficiency. What GPUs does your team find are most efficient on the Flux algorithm? And does Flux mining in its current state favor more NVIDIA or AMD graphics cards?
Well, let's jump in the Wayback Time Machine and go all the way back to 2018, right? Okay. End of 2018 into 2019. And all of a sudden, ASIC miners came to Equihash, right? So you had all these projects that were flipping out. Of course, Flux was up there. You had, I can't even remember all the projects. So there were so many of them. They've all kind of faded out now. But a lot of them decided to stay with ASICs. But we created a group called it was the Byzantine Generals Tea Party. And And essentially what that was all the major players in projects in the crypto space, and they all committed to heading in a direction where they would be ASIC resistant. So we had to build a new algorithm. Okay. So that's what we did around ZelHash. We built ZelHash to be and it's held true, tried and true up to this point. It's been ASIC resistant, no FPGAs on it, and it's done its job. But people ask, they say, well, what happens, if ETH goes to proof of stake, Flux becomes the go-to or one of the top go-tos, and all of a sudden you see ASICs come out. I'd say then we'll fork the project, we'll rewrite the code or the algorithm, and we'll make sure we're always GPU friendly. Right now, because of the way that the way that the way that the algo was crafted, it does favor Team Green, NVIDIA. But I always try to put this in perspective. Whether you're having AMD and you're getting a little less than what the Team Green are, you're still able to mine that project effectively. Once Ethereum goes away, Flux becomes more valuable to even. I think there's other algos that favor AMD, but as we move forward with proof of useful work, our goal is to level that playing field.
This man's jumping ahead in my notes. See, I told you. I told you.
It's called a setup. I'm setting you up.
I know. Setting you up. Man, natural right here. I don't even have to do this. I can just turn off my mic, just let this man talk. So we'll get there talking about proof of useful work. But on that note, talking a little more about Flux, this thing called parallel assets, it's come up in our conversation here. How do you explain to someone what parallel assets are that isn't traditionally in the crypto space? Because I think from a miner's perspective, it really sets Flux apart. When you're starting to look at profitability, that's really where it gains our attention. It's like, oh, wait, I have an opportunity to make more than what I traditionally would. Yep. So how would you explain parallel assets at a very high level?
So if I was going to explain this to my mom or something like that, I would say this. Parallel assets are like having dual citizenship. You're a citizen of the United States, but let's say you also have a citizenship in Canada. Okay. So when you're in the United States, you get the full value of being a United States citizen, right? Everything that the United States has to offer. Then you jump in a plane and you head to Canada. And you're in Canada, you get everything that Canada has to offer, including maple syrup, which is freaking delicious too, by the way, if you've ever been there. So basically what parallel assets are is you have a main chain, which is your one, that's your one citizenship. And then you have parallel assets that allow you to reside in these different locations. So, what parallel assets did and why it is unique from many other platform out there is it addressed a massive, what I call the ultimate problem solver, right? Because when crypto was started, we always said all these blockchains need to be able to work together at some point, interchain operability. Right. So I'm not saying parallel assets will be the end all be all for interchain operability, but we're the very first project that I'm aware of that exists in the world of Flux, ETH, KDA, Tron, Solana, Binance Smart Chain, and soon to be Avalanche, and was to be Luna, but not no more of that shit.
So hey, he's talking about it, so I'm gonna ask. So how exactly are you guys handling that whole Luna situation, and how does that affect the Flux parallel assets?
Well, the good news is when we lay out our parallel assets and we do our due diligence on the projects, we do more than 2. So we already have an idea of, we promised 10, but it could easily be 15 parallel assets. It could be 20. Wow. But it has to be logical, right? Binance Smart Chain was logical, cheap fees. People love to participate in DeFi on that chain. ETH, it was just natural because it's ETH and you have to be there, right? Solana, obvious reasons, and definitely around, that DeFi space as well. So we span these different platforms, but we always think ahead. So like when everybody was freaking out about the Terra Luna thing, I was like, it's not that big a deal. We'll figure out the next one. So,
Got it.
We already have a short list of about 3 projects that we've been looking at pretty regular. And I think, I can share a few projects we definitely talked about was Dot, Polkadot. Love that.
Awesome.
Love that ecosystem, what they're doing. Cosmos. That's another one that people haven't probably heard about. That's a new one that we're just started looking into. You've got Ergo, which could be a possibility. We would like to try to bring a proof of work project in to the parallel world. So
good.
Yeah, you got Avalanche. Obviously, is the one that's being added, and there might be a couple other that I like as well. But that's why it's so important to understand why. Because the next question would be, well, what happened if one of these, if we launched if we would have launched in Terra Luna, hypothetically, and you have the parallel asset, and then this debacle happens, what happens? Well, you always can come home. You always come back to Flux. So, ultimately that's the way it's been designed, so that you're not abandoned in some chain. And let's say you come back to Flux and you decide to head over to Binance Smart Chain, you can do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good to know. So you had mentioned proof of useful work implementation here in the pipeline. So can you explain kind of what it looks like from a mining perspective for the difference between a proof of work and a proof of useful work?
Well, have you ever seen that GIF where the guy goes?
I have.
And that stuff flies up, right?
Yep.
Well, that's how, when we talk about proof of useful work in our meetings, that's how I feel. I'm like, oh, that's the epiphany moment, right?
Okay.
So proof of useful work really it's not a concept of Flux's. It was actually a concept that was created by some students at MIT and some other schools that got together, and they talked about useful proof of work. So they didn't understand how to translate it to the blockchain space, but they knew that by taking and solving one of Satoshi Nakamoto's dilemmas, which was, as these projects scale and they grow and use more compute resources for transactional validation and consensus mechanism only, right? That is a waste of compute power. So how do we, instead of using this to basically just transactional validation and security for the chain, how do we take part of that and tap into the compute resource that we can pull out and we can actually put it to use in other areas and as useful work? So whether it's rendering or folding at home or, AI or whatever it is, being able to use that compute resource more than just validating the transactional data going across your network or the consensus mechanism.
Got it. And how will that look from a GPU mining perspective? Will that be? It won't be any different. We're just kind of plugged into the pool and off we go, and we're rewarded with Flux, or will that operate or reward in any other different manner?
Well, we're kind of getting down into the weeds a little bit here in terms of what I'll do is what I can share is
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Tomorrow we're going to have a fairly large announcement around proof of useful work.
Awesome.
As well as another announcement, a fairly large one as well, the biggest one of my career. So,
whoa,
yeah.
Okay. So, I'm excited for you and the team. That's awesome.
I don't know when this is going to air, but
this will air Friday, so it'll be right after it.
Okay, so some big stuff happened.
Woo!
Right. So, I think that the easiest way to describe proof of useful work is it's going to depend on miners to continue to do what they're doing. The algorithm will there'll still be an algorithm there. You'll still be mining. You may not be mining on the chain. You may be mining proof of useful work, and if you are tapped for that, there could be additional resources coming your way as well.
Very cool.
So not only have we incentivized our miners with parallel assets to be able to participate and help with other chains, but we're also acknowledging that if that GPU power is tapped into, there should be an escalated mechanism for economic mechanism to incentivize them to stay and to work and continue to keep working. So
that's awesome. I like how you give the details, but not too much. I love it. That's perfect. Thank you. That. I'm excited just hearing that, because I'm now I'm really interested to see what's coming with proof of useful work. And it's why so many people had kind of asked me to bring that question to your attention, which is I think fantastic.
Yep. It's a big deal. I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah.
So, well, I can say part of the announcement now, because I can tell you. So, Flux announced yesterday, because now we're on Friday, right? So, we announced yesterday that we would be partnering with the Switzerland University of Geneva in Switzerland. So essentially, to help us study and build out and have participation by all of the universities in Switzerland that will actually be helping with Flux. So,
Wow.
and proof of use will work. So this is a big deal because I've said this before to everyone. We want to tap into our youngest minds, the people that want to help participate in the project. This is a great way to do it with proof of use will work. And these folks are so it's and I misspoke. It's the University of Applied Sciences in Geneva, Switzerland. So I just want to make sure I clarify that. Don't want to offend anybody because they're awesome. So yeah, we're going to go to other educational institutions. We're going to get as much input as we can, and we're going to build this thing out so that it really is awesome. So yeah, we're really looking forward to proof of use will work.
Awesome. So jumping ahead here, actually jumping back here where you're talking about Zelcore a little bit. So for most people, Zelcore is just a crypto wallet. Like as a GPU miner, at least, let's say it's just a crypto wallet. That's what they identify with it for. But for new miners stepping into the space, what features does Zelcore offer that may surprise most people listening to this that didn't even know?
Well, I would say if you've used other crypto platforms, multi-asset platforms, or they call themselves a multi-asset platform, you'll see it's very one-sided. It's basically developed around investors, right? So the storage, the maintenance, and custody of your own assets, right? So Zelcore is geared more for so we'll say that's the passive model. The active model means you're mining, you're running nodes, you're trading, you're actively going out and deploying your capital. You're actively involved. It isn't just a set it and forget it crypto wallet that sits over here that holds your assets. So inside of Zelcore, you're going to see, Flux nodes, Furo nodes, the ability to run, your dApps. There's Fusion, which is the ability to move through parallel assets. All these different pieces. All of the major exchanges are in Zelcore. So whether you want to trade on Binance or KuCoin or Coinbase Pro or whatever it is, already in Zelcore. You obviously can custody all your assets in there as well. So, and we have, I want to say it's about 500 plus assets and then 20 gazillion trillion tokens on top of that. So way more than what I even want to admit.
Yeah, it's one thing that I've noticed that like Zelcore is, you had mentioned previously, like it's an ecosystem. Like it is everything, it's kind of doing a little bit of everything. And each and every day I find different things in there that I was like, oh, very cool. Like when I was looking into redeeming some of the parallel assets. Now, granted, I'm so new that I don't need to worry about that. I mine on Miner Pool, and so that converts for me. So I don't need to worry about redeeming them, which is great. But I was like, how does that process happen if I was mining elsewhere or if I'd been mining for years? And so that's kind of where I was like, great, you can do it right in Zelcore. Because I went in, I'm like, oh, do I have anything to redeem? And it's like, no. And then I read up on it. And I'm like, well, of course I don't have anything to redeem. Like, there's nothing there because it's automatically getting converted. So if people haven't checked out Zelcore, please go over and check it out. It's a massive. So we talked about nodes earlier, and I will admit I don't have a node yet. I need to find the time of day to get one going. I absolutely do. I got the hardware ready for it. I got the Flux already secured with mining it, which if people are interested, you don't need to just mine it. You can buy the Flux and, as we talked about, jump right in. But do you believe the future of mining is more of a node platform versus a proof of work GPU type of miner? And the reason I bring that up is just looking at the current GPU market, looking at mining operational costs like electricity and heat. And then, of course, we're hearing a lot on environmental impact. Nodes kind of turn the tide on that. I mean, you even talked about earlier how you guys converted a farm into more of a node infrastructure. Do you think that's more the future of mining is more node based?
I don't. I think the future of mining is something like what Flux is doing with kind of the best of both worlds. You can say we have a proof of work side of the house that essentially is our miners and all those folks, and then we have our node side you could call proof of stake. Essentially, because I guess, stake, fundamentally it's not the same thing, but it's
like collateral.
It's like a collateralization, right? You're basically setting up the nodes and running. You have to put equity into building these platforms out, right? So there has to be miners involved. There has to be somebody out there that's spending the time, the money, the talent, the commitment to build these farms, to run these rigs, to generate the asset. That puts value behind what you're generating. It's not, a proof of stake. They mint and we see how that worked for Terra Luna. Terra Luna had an ICO, and they minted everything, and they built a stable asset on it. Well, that didn't work out very well. So, miners, all of a sudden, it's like miners are cool again. You know what I mean? Like you hear people talking about, well, maybe proof of stake is challenging. And maybe it is centralized. Well, no shit.
Just a little bit.
Really? Just a little bit, just a tad.
Yep.
And we're all being vindicated because we've said it from the beginning. I think there are better ways to mine. And that's why I believe proof of use work is so important. I believe the technologies are going to see iterating over the next 4 or 5 years is going to be fantastic. I would like to see personally the ability to mine with CPUs as well come back into the fold. One of the things that we talk about internally is we want Flux to be carbon negative. And people say, how can it be carbon negative? It's a proof of work project. Well, there's an equation that goes into that, and that is the amount of energy expanded versus the value added of return. So, it's how much energy did I expand by buying the graphics card, setting up the rig, launching it, mining, running electricity, and what is the outcome of it? If the outcome is greater because you can now use that compute resources for, mapping proteins, rendering, AI, edge compute, whatever it is, right? And this value offsets this, well, you are now carbon negative, essentially, because these folks would have gone and got that compute power for someone else. They would have either built a facility, or they would have, lots of new cards would have been deployed. Our goal is to remain evergreen. We want all the graphics cards we can get. We want all the CPUs we can get eventually with our Cirrus nodes. Matter of fact, FPGAs will come on board with our off-chain Cirrus nodes. We want to make sure that every bit of compute that can exist out there has a place if they would like it to be parked on Flux. And it's not only for Flux. We intend that, proof of use will work. We're building this for the crypto community.
That's insane. Like now I just learned more and more about it, and it's like just talking with you about it, and it's like, man, you are finding a use for any type of technology available in order to be part of that. And then just like putting it to work. Like everybody looks at like CPU mining and stuff like that. It's like a thing of the past, but it's like, well, wait, no, it has complete use. Yes. It just needs the right amount, the right type of work presented to it, which is, I think, fantastic. And what you're doing with just that whole mentality of proof of useful work with, as you said, we're able to utilize our hardware in this giant decentralized network in order to actually make impacts, like you're saying, versus just with these calculations. Now I'm even more excited for it. Let's go. Sign me up.
Well, how do you, the big question is this, how do we know if it works? Well,
yeah, that's true.
When we built out the node network, it was idle, right? It was just kind of chilling there. We had built out, I don't know, let's say the better part of 500-600 nodes. They were just sitting there chilling, and we were slowly working on a use case to deploy the nodes, right? So we wanted to have some weight behind it. And right then COVID hit. And we were in a team meeting, and we were talking about the nodes, and I said to our CTO today is Commenta. I said, Trunk, affectionately we call him. I said, Trunk, is there anything we can do to deploy on our node network to help out with mapping proteins, like with folding or something like that?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Today, who's a particle physicist, right? He sits there for a few minutes and he thinks and he says, I'll get back to you. The next day we deployed folding at home on all of the nodes, and we started folding that afternoon, and we went right up the ranks in folding. And as a matter of fact, we ran some folding competitions and all kinds of fun stuff. So
that's cool.
It does work. Proof of use work does work. And that's just another form of it done on the nodes, but we're going to do it with the graphics cards as well.
Fantastic. Absolutely. So this question comes from the community on Twitter. Someone had posted and said, we're kind of talking about Flux and nodes and stuff, and said, one mining pool currently has 46% of the hash rate on Flux. What is the impact if a majority of the miners move to that pool and do not distribute across other pools. That's kind of the first part of it. And the second part is, do the Flux nodes offer sufficient protection in the event that this would occur? Like, do they run hand in hand on the stability of the network, or no, there's a clear separation between church and state?
Well, I think the first thing we have to do is talk about the misnomer, what a 51% attack is. Like,
Perfect.
we want decentralization. There's no doubt about it.
Yep.
And any one particular pool having over 50% is concerning. So we always want to.
Yep.
I would like to see all of this hash rate distributed between the pools. If you're a pool operator out there and you want to build a Flux pool, reach out to us. We have a granting program for that as well. Try to get new people in the space to run these pools. But the nature of a 51% attack essentially is a double spend, and we have to think about who this affects. So every double spend attack that you've ever heard of, or it's been in the news or talked about, who was affected? Well, it was the exchanges. Why?
Yep.
Because the exchanges don't necessarily abide by the rules of the chain in terms of, for Flux, it's 40 confirmations. If for you to double spend Flux, you'd have to have 51% of the total network hash with several nodes. You would have to have the ability to attack for an extended period of time, and because we put our total confirmations on all exchanges above 40, it would basically shut the chain down. So it wouldn't shut it down in terms of the transactions would still go. It'd still keep going, but the nodes would stop validating so you follow the longest chain. It would stop validating the other chain, and they would fail. It's been tried multiple times, and every time they fail, it doesn't mean we don't. We have to be conscious of our hash power, and especially with new hash coming online. But really, the 51% attacks really do focus around the exchanges, and we have a really good mitigation plan with all the exchanges. So,
awesome.
It's
good to know.
I would say to that guy who's asking the question, and I hear it quite often, is, spread the hash. If you're a miner, get on one of the other smaller pools. No doubt about it. But it's not the end of the world if we're sitting at, 35 or 40% on one particular pool.
Yeah, I imagine we'll see a surplus of Flux pools popping up here as we get closer and closer to whenever proof of stake is. Just some of these pool miners, swapping that over. So that makes sense. So talking about proof of stake, among miners, honestly, Flux looks like the most promising to replace Ethereum come proof of stake. And I'm asking you, why do you feel that is? From a miner's perspective, why do you feel Flux seems like the easy replacement?
Well, I think it goes back to this. I mean, you and I both stated the same thing. We were hobbyists, right? We came into this because we found something interesting and we wanted to get involved in it. We wanted to develop it up. But as we did that, our passion led to also good monetary policy as well. We had to understand that what we were doing would yield us a reward, right? And if we're successful with our deployment of our miners, of our nodes, whatever it is, we get incentivized in returns with, as number go up, right? Mm-hmm. So ultimately, I think that most miners are smart business people. I think if you have... We try to be. I think if you have the acumen to build a mining rig, and you have the acumen to find a good logical project, you have the acumen to understand what your break-even point is, your delayed return on investment is, all these other fundamental things. And I think Flux logically answers all of those boxes that a miner would sit and check as they go down through. Okay, does this have use case? It does. Okay. Is it a utility asset? Yes, it is. What exchanges are they on? Do they really err on the side of decentralization? Yes. So you go down and do your own due diligence. You check all those boxes, and at the end, I think Flux is the one that gets the most boxes checked. And I think the miners will naturally gravitate toward that because, hey, I mean, we want to do great things, and we need their support to do it.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. You mentioned exchanges, which this is not on the question list, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. So I think some of the challenges that we as GPU miners see is Flux is not on as many well-known exchanges as we would traditionally like. Is there any reasoning behind that coming from your perspective?
I don't know, man. I think we're on pretty much all of the big ones. We got Binance, Binance US, Coinbase, or not Coinbase. I didn't say that. Don't break that. Don't break that. Okay.
Well, we'll edit that.
We've been in Coinbase review for the better part of probably what feels like 100 years, but I think it's been more like eight months or something like that. 8 months.
That's still a really long time. Especially in like the mining scene. 8 months. That's forever.
Yep. And then you have KuCoin, you have and then just a myriad of other exchanges out there. We're also in DeFi as well. So Uniswap, Pancake Swap, whatever, Sushi Swap, Food Swap, Azure, whatever. So I would say if I was going to take that statement and switch it around, it says what you're saying is, why aren't we on Coinbase? Because really, I
didn't say it. You did. I didn't say it, but that's okay.
That's the only one out there that's left, I think. I mean, we really knocked the rest of them out. So
you're in review as of right now, and just kind of playing that. Well, hopefully, I really hope for Flux's sake that it goes through before Ethereum's proof of stake, so then it's just a nice seamless transition for a lot of GPU miners, because I do know that Coinbase is one of the #1 exchanges that GPU miners use, at least in the US currently right now. But I've used KuCoin. KuCoin's great. I've had good success with them as well. So we'll keep the conversation going here. Just a few more questions to wrap things up today, talking about Ethereum and their proof of stake. So it does look like that we're finally going to get Ethereum proof of stake. It's going to become a reality this year. It looks like the case. Yeah, we'll see. We'll absolutely see. So in that case, is the Flux infrastructure ready when it comes down to the possibility of a massive amount of network hash rate, and what should GPU miners expect?
Well, we've been through this before, guys. So I'm talking to you miners. You know what this all looks like as new projects emerged, and we would move over and break things. So, what I think I'll do is I'll share a small, real quick story, and that is when we got our uplisting to Binance.com, and Binance decided that they were going to list the Binance Smart Chain Ethereum version of Flux, which is great, but it's no main chain. So everything had to move from main chain through Fusion to be added to Binance.com, right?
Oh my goodness.
So it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm chilling on the couch, about ready to fall asleep. Got the TV playing, the dog's laying in my lap, and then it's off to la. And all of a sudden, I feel a little vibration on the phone. I look down, and there's a tweet, because I follow Binance, and it says Flux has been added to Binance starting in 3 hours. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So, I call the guys, all hands on deck. Let's do it. Are we ready for this? Can we handle it? And one of the things we found, we didn't sleep for the better part of 2 days, because
the worst.
What we found was, no pun intended, it was a mass influx to the Binance Smart Chain, right? So they were leaving main chain. They wanted to go over and be participating in that first listing, and all that comes with that. That's a pretty exciting moment. So we're about an hour into this announcement, and we're seeing the system start to slow down, and Fusion is starting to have some degradation of service and things like that.
Okay.
And we're sitting in our Mighty Minds meeting, and I said to Trunk, Trunk, we got a problem. I said, if this goes down, it's really going to mess up our listing. We need to figure out a way for Fusion to be, to stay online and for everything to go the way it should. And he sat there for a couple of minutes, and he did that Trunk stare like he always does. And he says, I'm going to stand up 100 more nodes to run Fusion. And literally within 15 minutes, we had 100 more nodes running on Flux that was basically helping transition that. Because we have on-demand scaling. So we were proving our own point that we could do what we say we can do, right?
That's fantastic.
Then what happened was the Block Explorers started struggling, and they're like, "Hey, Block Explorer 1's down. I got it. Block Explorer 2's having problems. How are we going to handle that?" Trunk's like, "I don't know. Let's deploy 800. Let's deploy 800 Block Explorers," and we did. So
that's awesome.
Like
that's
that,
incredible.
We deployed it into the Flux ecosystem. They absorbed as a wetland what was happening, and then bam, it all came back to center again. So. The answer to your question is, are we ready? Well, you're never really ready for something of this magnitude. So I would say this, we are as well prepared as any project in the space, and we tried and true. We've been tried by fire, and I think that this is going to be an awesome thing, and we're ready to scale on demand. I told nobody's taking any vacation during August, so just tell the wife, tell the kids,
blackout.
Done.
Well, I think it's definitely comes down to very strategic from your team when it comes down to the amount of emphasis this year and previous that you've put on nodes and expanding it out for the public to now step into that space even more. I mean, it was always obtainable, but now you're just adding to that decentralized network and the node network with what you've been doing. It's very smart, especially as we approach proof of stake. So, speculation, you think they're going to hit August?
I think they are, and I'll tell you.
Really? Okay.
I'll tell you why. They're in the 11th hour. I mean, it's kind of do or die. They're losing their first mover advantage. There's other projects out there that are doing somewhat similar stuff, have heavy hitters behind them. I mean, some would argue Solana. I personally like KDA and a lot of things KDA is doing. We're seeing a lot of really quality, good projects coming through labs that want to basically be built on KDA and run on Flux. Which is great. So, I mean, I'd say 6 or 7 of the projects we have in labs right now are all KDA-based projects. So, I think they have to make the move, and I think it's gonna happen, and it's gonna be painful, and for them, not for us, because we're looking forward to it, because we want I'd like to say we're the heir apparent. But let's say that us and a few other projects are the heir apparents, right?
Yeah.
We'll fight it out in the hash wars, right?
I can't wait. I'm excited for it.
No, unless you're an OG, you wouldn't have understood that the hash wars was when Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, they forked, and they had these hash wars going where they wanted Bitcoin Cash to pass Bitcoin and all this other stuff. It was messy. So Roger Ver and all that kind of good stuff was pretty crazy.
It sounds like it. So we're going to switch gears for our last few questions here. Talk about mining and politics a little bit, because politics definitely affect your world quite a bit. So crypto adoption over the last year has been all over the place. Country to country, in the U.S., even state to state, with crypto mining being banned in some places versus others. Does that make you and the team a little bit uneasy as crypto slowly comes into the U.S. government and is looking at regulation and such like that? Because a lot of what you're talking about with like your proof of work and nodes, that all falls under that. If all of a sudden mining is banned, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, is that GPU mining, ASIC mining? Is that nodes? What does that look like? So in your mind, where do you go to? Are you uneasy with that? Do you follow that super closely? Give us the rundown a little bit.
Yeah, it's my life. I mean, I'm chief strategy officer of both Flux and Zelcore, so I always have to be looking at what's coming down the pipe. I also participate in part of the blockchain alliance that we basically watch and look over some of the things that are coming out of DC. I live close to DC. So, my goal is to actually head down there at some particular point in time. There's a few conventions coming up where we want to talk about it as well. So we need to be advocates for the space that what we're doing. I would say this: you got a better chance of banning breathing than you do mining. And this great experiment was what happened about a year ago when China came out and said, we're banning all Bitcoin mining in China.
Yep.
And that made the United States the number one location for everybody to land. But lo and behold, who's number 2? So they haven't talked about it, but it's China, right? So as Trump would say, China, right? But so they attempted to ban it. And what they found is they can take away the big mining farms, but you can't really target the individual users. They're always going to be somebody that's going to work around that. So it makes more sense. It's much more logical to embrace it, help regulate it, tax it, than it is to try to outright ban it. And I actually am a firm believer. I think what you're going to see, and this is the writing is on the walls. This is completely my opinion, and in no way or shape or form, reflects on Flux. But I think a lot of these proof of stake projects are going to absolutely be gone after as unregistered securities. So the day that comes,
that's true.
I think the day that comes, and it will, is you'll see these large exchanges. They're going to panic because they're going to have a massive deficit of assets on the platforms to trade. So what all of a sudden becomes viable? Hey,
this guy,
right? So I might not be Mr. Right, but I'm Mr. Right now. So let's go.
I like it. Yeah.
I think you're going to see a push for proof of work, as a matter of fact. And when I'm starting to see both sides of the aisle in the States, Cory Booker came out and said that he believes that, if you know politics in the States, he's a diehard Democrat, which historically don't really care much for Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. Correct. But he came out and said, it's the SEC needs to stay out of it. It's leave it be. We have no business in it. Let it happen. So I do believe that there will be at the end of it. Loomis from Wyoming had just put forth a really, really solid bill. I'm looking forward to sitting down, and I got the bullet points, but I want to really read the whole thing through and through. But I think there's going to be some education around. It's like, hearing them even talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies like this is just amazing. It's just absolutely amazing to me.
Yeah, so, it's mainstream now. That's the thing. It's like it is mainstream. You're hearing it anywhere you go, and Bitcoin is kind of the flagship there. But the nice thing is, it kind of leads the way. So I agree. Yep. So talking about Bitcoin, some countries have been very quick to bring on Bitcoin as a form of kind of financial stability for their economy and their currency value. We've even seen worldwide. Do you think that this was a little premature for something like Bitcoin and the infrastructure, or no? Are we there? Is this something that we are there as a crypto infrastructure?
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, everybody says to me, like, we're in our meetings and different stuff, and like, we're in a bear market. We're not in a bear market, people. We're in a drawdown. Drawdowns are natural in crypto. This is just a cycle that's a real bear
another
market.
Cycle.
Another cycle is all it is. But what I am seeing is an absolute bull market on the development of the platforms that these things are going to run on. So
that's a good way to put it.
I see exponential growth coming. I really do. And I think that as we start to get some regulatory pieces in play, we start to understand, kind of how these things will play out. I think these countries are smart for doing that. What's the downside? I mean, you have a complete fiat has always been destined to fail. From the day that it was created, right? It's never succeeded ever in the history of mankind.
The U.S. is not doing it right when it comes to fiat, so I understand. Yeah.
Well, you want to talk about you want to talk about a pump and dump. I mean, let's take a look at I think the numbers between 60 or 70% of all money in circulation was printed within the last 3 years. If that doesn't scare the shit out of you,
Hello, inflation. Hello, inflation. Yep. Yeah, so, absolutely.
What's like economics 101 we learn in school, and that is hedge that shit, right? You know what I mean? So whether you're a nation state or whether you're a miner, you hedge it. Make sure you keep your fiat, make sure you keep your stock portfolio, your 401k, make sure you're hedging in crypto, make sure crypto is a fairly stout position in your portfolio, and I think you'll be all right.
Yeah, I always push diversifying, especially when it comes down to even my crypto portfolio. It's like diversify, because you never know, which one's going to pop off and such. So no, I absolutely agree. So, second to last question here. Flux has the potential to really be the next AWS or Azure, but with a more decentralized platform to support it. What is your next big milestone, or where is your crosshairs in that space?
Well, yesterday, because today's Friday, right?
That's right.
We announced a very first for blockchain. We announced a massive partnership, and that partnership is what I have talked about for years, and that is Web 2 and Web 3 working in a symbiotic relationship, right?
Correct,
working together in tandem to bridge that gap. The closest thing I can compare it to is when we were bare metal, we had all of our servers running in, our data centers. And then all of a sudden, here comes cloud. They work together. Even today, there's still people that have large data centers and they have cloud footprints as well.
Yep.
Web 3 is going to augment that as well. So you'll have Web 1, which will always exist. It'll always be on-prem servers. Web 2, which I don't think goes away anytime soon. Logically, we're going to help them craft a better business model than what they're doing now, because we're going to put pressure on them. But I think Web 3 is going to work in tandem with Web 1 and Web 2. So in the end, I think that you're going to see, for us to be the AWS of blockchain, we have to do a couple. We have to do a couple things. One, we have to deliver at scale, which that is going to take a partnership with Web 2 folks as we grow, right? As we develop out. And two, we've got to do it in a very rapid process. So the next year and a half, the next 2 years for Flux is going to be fast and furious. And Titan,
can't wait.
Our project Titan that we are releasing, that's going to have a massive partner. You'll know about it by now. And I couldn't be more excited. We're changing the face of what blockchain is. We're moving out of the fintech space, the area that we've all gravitated to, and we're starting to move to the big problem space, the standard tech stacks, and that's what Flux is aiming for.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, it feels like it's every week your team has some type of announcement that's moving that needle forward. And that I think that is like, you constantly talk about utility. You've said the word utility a million times in this conversation, and these are all use case. It's like when you're looking at investments, if you're looking from an outside perspective looking in and you're looking at your portfolio and what you're investing in next, think about it. You're looking at that company and like, what tech do they have coming down the road, or what products do they have coming down the road? It makes Flux an easy investment. It really does. When you're, it's crazy. So we're going to end off here with one last question, and that is going to be, you, Dan, are talking to a GPU miner audience. We have proof of stake coming up for Ethereum. We have newbies that are just getting into this. We have seasoned veterans that are listening to this. Why should these folks put their hash rate on Flux?
I think it comes down to this. I think you have to put some faith. It's like standard investment, right? If I invest in something, I don't necessarily invest in the technology. I invest in the people that are building the technology. And the people that are building the Flux technology is the community that surrounds it. And I think that's what sets us apart from every other place. I say we have the smartest community in crypto because it is not easy being a miner. It's not easy being a node operator. It's not easy being a developer. It's not easy being, someone deploying something on Flux. So what you do is you create an educated base, and that educated base is going to help to basically replicate out and cascade out to these different areas. So I would say this, you go to a project where you're appreciated. Go to a project that acknowledges your value, doesn't look at you as a negative. And there are projects out there that look at miners as negatives. I've heard some really crazy stuff here recently, especially around this Ethereum thing. It just doesn't make sense to me. Why bite the hand that feeds you? Why cut off the people that help make you so great? And I can tell you right now, Flux isn't Dan. I'm not Vitalik. Right? I'm not here to sell you a technology. What I am here to do is tell you about a community and a project that is very well developed, very well rounded, and driven. If Dan doesn't exist tomorrow, this project goes on. If our entire team didn't exist tomorrow, this project goes on. Be invested in something that you believe in. If you follow your mission, and that is to participate in decentralization, participate in GPU mining, participate in technology. Financial success is the byproduct of doing that. So, look at these things, do your due diligence, come in and talk to us. Our Discord is always wide open. You're more than likely going to get an answer from, one of our educated mod staff and team members, or you might even get me, because I'm in there quite a bit. So
awesome.
And that's do you want to be part of a community, or do you want to be and feel engaged, or do you want to be a utility? Because that is, you're just a means to an end. Well, you're not with Flux. You're part of our community, and that's the way we feel about it.
Awesome. What an awesome way to leave things off. I appreciate it. So Dan, where can people check you out? I'll make sure I put these links down below if they want to follow up with any of your social media or anything like that.
Absolutely. So you can check us out online at runonflux.io. You can follow us on Twitter at runonflux. You can follow me personally at DAK_Flux. And yeah, check us out. If you go to Discord, we've got Telegram. We've got Telegram. Be careful. Telegram is dangerous. Don't go alone.
I set up my first Telegram account today because of a vendor. A vendor was like, "Oh, well," I was like, "All right, I'm stepping into deep waters. Here we go." But awesome. So what I'll do, I'll put links to all of those down below so that people can go ahead and easily find them, especially the Discord to join the community, which is, I think, awesome. Well, from myself and from the entire GPU mining scene, thank you, Dan, for coming on and chatting through these things. I mean, we could sit here forever. There's so many questions that I have and the community has. So I do appreciate your time. If you guys enjoyed the video and enjoyed this type of format, please go ahead and leave a comment down below on any of the topics that we talked about today. Feel free to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed this. And finally, hey, if you're brand new to the channel, you're checking this out for the very first time, you're like, hey, what's this Hobbyist Miner guy? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. So from myself and Dan here, thank you guys very much for watching. Take care.